What's up, B2? Capital G here, checking out a brand new archetype coming out in Dark Sabers. This is the Brandish Maiden archetype, and I hope that I am not exaggerating too much here, but I think that this might be the most unique archetype Konami has ever given us, or at least that I can remember in all of my time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I know some people are going to look at this archetype and they're just going to say, oh, come on, Cap G, stop acting like you ain't seen this before. This is just a Link version of Invoked, and there are some similarities there, I'll give you that. There's only one main deck monster, a la Alistair the Invoker, but I mean, when you look a little deeper, this is like the first archetype I think I've ever seen where Konami is clearly telling us they only want us to have one monster on the field, and then you basically have to empower the fuck out of that monster. In fact, the spells in this archetype, almost all of them do not let you even activate them if you control a monster in your main monster zones, which is great. That's unheard of. So basically they want you to summon a Link monster and then work with that one Link monster. It's actually very interesting. Also, this is the exact opposite of Ultrageist. There are no trap cards for this archetype, so very interesting in design. Let's go ahead and break it down. I believe there are 12 cards to talk about, so this video might be a little long, but I'll try to move at a good pace. So first card up is Brandish Maiden Ray, or as I like to think of her as, Saber from the Fate Stay series. I mean, if you've ever seen those animes, like, this card reminds me so much of Saber, the blonde hair, the dress, the sword. They might as well just call her Saber. She's a dark warrior, even though she looks like she should be light attribute, but whatever. Dark Sabers is the name of the pack. 1500 attack, 1500 defense, level 4. Shoutouts to Rhoda. First effects are hard once per turn, and second effect is a hard once per turn as well. First effect is actually kind of crazy. It's a quick effect. It says you contribute this card, special summon one Brandish Maiden monster from your extra deck to an extra monster zone. So basically, it lets you go straight into the Link monsters, but it's crazy because it lets you do it during either player's turn. I mean, there aren't that many ways of Link summoning during your opponent's turn, but this is one of them. Second effect makes you think it's very similar to Invoked because it gives you that dual utility. While this card is in your graveyard, if a face-up Maiden Link monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's monster effect or is destroyed by battle, you can special summon this card, and that's just really good. I mean, basically, she instantly goes into the Link monsters, and then if the Link monsters die by any way, then they'll just come back, or they'll just, put Brandish Maiden Ray back on the field, and then you can use Ray's effect, and you can just jump into another Link monster. So it seems incredibly strong, and it seems like that is kind of your core win condition, getting those Link monsters on the field and then praying to God that they don't get kaiju'd or Trishulat or something like that. Seems pretty good though. I like the fact that you can Link summon during either player's turn. Let's go ahead and break down the two Link monsters. Brandish Maiden Shizuku is the Water Machine Link. She's Link 1. They're both Link 1s, by the way. 1500 attack, so her stats are not actually higher than Ray's stats. She points top right. I wish that these links pointed down towards you, but it's fine, I guess. She requires one Brandish Maiden monster except the Water monster. That's fine, just use Ray. Effect number 1, and you can actually only summon both of the Link monsters once per turn. I'm not going to read that again with the fire one. First effect, monsters your opponent control loses 100 attack and defense for each spell card in your graveyard. So this archetype also gets benefit effects by having a ton of spells in your graveyard. I don't really think that that's going to be that relevant, just making your opponent lose 100 attack. I mean, if you basically need like 1,000 attack for me to really consider it like worth it at that point. That's 10 different spells. I don't think it's going to happen all that much. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card was special summoned during this turn, you can add one Brandish spell card from your deck to your hand that does not share a name with a card in the graveyard. Now that's what we're actually talking about. That's a nice little utility effect. It becomes basically a +1. The only downside is you won't be able to use that spell card during that turn. Second card is Brandish Maiden Kagari. This is the better one in my opinion. This is a fire machine. Link 1, 1500 attack, top left is the pointer, and she requires any Brandish Maiden monster except a fire monster, so again use Ray. Her first effect is, if this card is special summon, you can target one Brandish spell card in your graveyard, add it to the hand. This is better in my opinion, because you get to add that spell instantly and just activate it immediately. It fishes for whatever cards you need. I know it might not be the greatest thing, you really don't want to go into it first, I would imagine, because your graveyard might be empty, but being able to activate that spell card immediately really is a huge upside. Also, this card does not rely on your opponent having monsters on the field, as she gains 100 attack for each spell card in your graveyard. That's her second effect. Yeah, this one seems like the better one. Doesn't rely on your opponent really to have monsters on the board. You can get the effect and use it immediately. One of the cool things about Ray is, because Ray is a quick effect, you can actually summon Ray, attack your opponent for 15, and then jump right into the Link monster, then attack them for another 15, which is actually pretty nice there. First card is Brandish Skill Afterburner, normal spell, and all of the spell cards except I believe 2 of them so far have this effect, and this is where the archetype becomes very interesting. It says if there is no monster in your main monster zone. So for you to be able to activate these cards, guys, you either have to have no monster on the field, or you have to have a monster in that extra monster zone, which that is either that could be the death of this archetype competitively, man. That means no scapegoat shenanigans, no monster reborn your opponent's monster and kill them with. That is very interesting. So this card lets you target a face-up monster on the field, destroy it. Then if there are 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, as I said, the more spells you have, the more effects that these spells get. You can destroy 1 spell or trap card on the field. That's actually really good. It can actually pop your own cards, which the field spell will benefit from. We'll talk about that when I get to the field spell. This seems like a really good card. I mean, if it was a quick play, it would be bananas, automatic 3-up, but it is simple. It's simple board removal, and it can pop 2 cards on the field instead of just 1. Next up, Brandish Startup Engage. This is the best card in the entire deck, in my opinion. Well, when it comes to the spells, Ray's the best card in the entire deck, but this is the card that gets the deck going. This says, add 1 Brandish card from your deck to your hand, except Startup Engage, okay? Then if there are 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, you can draw 1 card. So this basically searches the entire archetype. It searches Ray so that you can go into your links. The incredible thing is, this is not a hard once per turn, so I could actually see you potentially activating multiple of this in a turn and being able to draw like 2 cards in addition to searching everything in the archetype. I imagine that's why I couldn't search itself, because then people would use all 3 of them in 1 turn. This seems like a bona fide 3-of. Don't play the deck unless you're going to play 3 of this. Next up, we have a couple of the quick plays. The first one is Brandish Mecha Shark Cannon. This is a quick play spell. This says target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. If there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can special summon it to your field instead of banishing it, but it cannot attack. So this seems like a DD Crow on face value. I do think it's interesting that they let you get one of your opponent's monsters, which at first seems really good, but it can attack, and it also turns off your ability to actually use the rest of your spells. So that seems like an incredibly sharp double-edged sword. So if you activate this and you snatch one of your opponent's monsters from their graveyard, you better know what you're doing there, because you're turning off your ability to activate any of your spell cards in this archetype for the most part. So that might get a little dicey there, but I do see some upside, especially if you're in a top deck war. It might not even matter. So that's an interesting card. Could be very matchup dependent. Infernoids or 60 card decks, you'll definitely want this card. Next up is Brandish Mecha Widow Anchor. This is one that says target 1 effect monster on the field, negate that monster's effects until the end of this turn. Then if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can take control of that monster until the end phase. I like this one more because I think that the downside is not as evident. This one can potentially, like, monster effect negation is always going to be good in Yu-Gi-Oh! Forever. It's a quick play, so you can use it during either player's turn. Activate, your opponent activates a card. You don't want to deal with that monster effect. Just, get rid of it. But the fact is, you can activate this even with no monster on the field. You can take your opponent's monster and then you can just attack with it. You might actually be able to kill them, and then who knows, maybe it's a card you can link summon with it or something like that, and then your spell and traps won't be turned, or your spell cards won't be turned off, because your monster will still be in that extra monster zone. So I think I actually like this one more. It seems like it'll probably be a 3-of, especially considering it seems like the primary defensive card for this archetype. So I like this card a lot. We've got another quick play spell. This is Brandish Mecha Hornet Bit. If there are, well, I'm not going to read that again. Special summon 1 Brandish Maiden token, Warrior, Dark level 1, 0 attack, 0 defense. In defense position, it cannot be tributed. Also, if there are 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, the token's attack becomes 1500. Also, the defense becomes 1500. I'm not sure if the attack changing, I'm not sure if that, it changing to 1500 is going to be relevant because you do summon the token in defense position. It is a Link Karibo token potentially because it's level 1. Mainly, I think that this is a card that is supposed to be a replacement for Ray. If you don't have access to Ray because she gets banished, this can go straight into your Link monsters. It can kind of restart your engine, I guess, a little bit, where at least you get the Link monsters. And I think that it'll probably be a card you run maybe a couple copies of just in case your Rays do get banished. You can still go into the Link monsters. Then we have the Brandish skill jamming wave. This says target one set slash this is a normal spell, by the way, not quick play. Target one set spell slash trap card on the field, destroy it, and then if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can destroy 1 monster on the field. If this was a quick play, it would have been so much better. Another amazing disruption card. Seems matchup dependent. If you're playing against a deck that sets a lot of traps, paleo, altergeist, trap tricks, you can use this to a lot of effectiveness. If it would not have been like a normal spell, if it would have been a quick play and you could use this during your opponent's end phase before they can flip those cards over, it would have not been matchup dependent in my opinion, because just about every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh sets at least some type of spells and traps. We have the field spell, which is Brandish Airspace Area 0, and this is a hard once per turn on both of the effects. Effect number 1, you can target 1 other card you control, excavate the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add 1 excavated Brandish card from your to your hand, shuffle the other cards back into the deck. If a Brandish card or cards was excavated, send that target to the graveyard. So this is really good. It's a potential +1 every single turn. It does require you to have another card on the field, but even if you don't have a monster, all you have to do is just set one of your spell cards and then target the set card. Doesn't really seem to be that big of a problem. If this card is sent to the field or sent from the field to the graveyard by a card effect, so again, this is where this card actually puts in a lot of work, you can special summon 1 Brandish Maiden monster from your deck. So it cannot miss timing and it gets raised straight from your deck. So you might have to blow this card up in certain situations. There are cards in this deck that let you do that. So I think the field spell is actually really, really good. Next up is this continuous spell. I don't think I like this one all that much because it seems like it's just a little too dependent on things going right or having the field spell on board. This is Brandish Mechanism Multi-Roll, continuous spell card. Once per turn, you can target 1 other card you control, send that target to the graveyard, so obviously it works well with the field spell. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to your spell card activations until the end of the turn. It seems really good with the field spell, but outside of that, and not really all that great. I don't think I've read anything so far that's so powerful your opponent would want to like immediately solemn it. Some of these effects seem pretty good when you have their second effects online as well, but I don't really know if that's going to be all that great. Second effect, once per turn during the end phase, you can set a number of Brandish spell cards with different names from your graveyard to your field up to the number of Brandish spell cards you activated during this turn while this card was face up, but banish them if they leave the field, or banish them if they leave the field. That effect seems like it could potentially be amazing, but it might not be that good if you're in a position where you don't have a ton of Brandish cards in your hand, like a bunch of spells. This card seems like it might not actually be that good. It's also a terrible top deck, I would imagine, because you can't activate really either effect. So to me, this card feels like it needs a little bit to go right for it to be good. If you have the field spell in it, then it's obviously amazing, but I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. It's one of those cards where I kind of have to see how it actually works in like common Yu-Gi-Oh under, common circumstances. Then we have the final card, Brandish Mecha Eagle Booster, quick play spell. This one says target 1 face-up monster on the field until the end of the turn. This card is unaffected by card effects except its own. If there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, it cannot be destroyed by battle until the end of the turn. So I imagine this is how Konami wants you to like play around things like Evac Device and Torrential Tribute, Bottomless Trap Hole, basically all those annoying cards that would potentially get rid of your Link monsters. I think that this archetype is super interesting. The one thing that I see as a glaring weakness is these monsters are weak as fuck. They are only 1500 attack for all 3 of them. I think what this deck desperately needs is an Honest. They need like a spell card, quick play that doubles the attack of all of your Brandish monsters, because the Brandish monsters, the Links, like they have these effects built into them where your opponent's monsters get weaker by 100 attack or they get stronger by 100 attack, but it's not really gonna mean that much. If they just give this archetype maybe a little quick play that doubles the original attack of a Brandish monster, you know what I mean, that would actually be amazing. Like that would really solve some of the problems I think that this deck is going to have, because I also really don't see this deck being able to do that much damage, considering you can't really have a bunch of monsters on the field, otherwise your spell cards don't work anymore. But very interesting and unique archetype. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm sorry that the video was so long, but I did try my best, and it is like, 12 cards for an archetype all revealed at once. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.